So you're a Nissan owner, and that confusing C1130 code just popped up on your dashboard. Well, you've come to the right place. In this quick explainer, we're going to break down exactly what that error means and give you a super clear plan to figure out what's going on.
Right? That check engine light comes on, you plug in your trusty scanner, and it spits out C1130. It sounds all technical and, maybe a little intimidating, but don't you worry, we're going to get this sorted out together.
Our whole goal here is really simple. We want to give you a clear, step-by-step guide so you can actually understand the problem and know exactly what to look for. No more guesswork.
All right, first things first, what message is your car actually trying to send you with this specific code? Let's dive in.
Here's the bottom line. C1130 means your car's main computer has spotted a communication breakdown with the engine's fuel system. You can basically think of it like a big red flag from your car saying, hey, I'm getting a weird signal from a really important part, and you need to check it out.
And the computer that's sending that message? That's the ECM, or the Engine Control Module. Just think of this as your car's central brain. It's the one in charge, and it's the one that sounds the alarm when one of its systems isn't reporting back correctly.
Okay, so now that we know what the code means, we need to figure out what's causing it. And in this case, it's kind of like a little mystery. We have 4 main culprits we need to investigate.
And here they are, our usual suspects. The problem could be something as simple as a loose wire, or it could be an issue with one of the main control units. We're just going to check them off one by one, and we'll start with the most common and easiest fixes first.
All right, let's get into the actual diagnostic process. We're going to start with the simplest and most common causes, because honestly, that's often where you'll find the solution.
Our first suspect is the wiring itself, the harness and all its little connectors. A lot of the time, the problem is just a bad connection, which is actually great news because that's usually the easiest thing to fix.
So how do you check it? Start with a simple visual inspection. Engine vibrations can work connectors loose over time, so just give them a gentle wiggle. Does anything feel off? Then, get a really good look at the connection points. Do you see any of that greenish-white crusty stuff? That's corrosion, and it's super common if you live where it's wet or salty. Or maybe you see some cracked plastic. Often, just a little contact cleaner or simply plugging a connector back in securely is all it takes to fix the whole thing.
Now, if the main wiring harness seems perfectly fine, our investigation moves on to suspect number 2, the ABS actuator and its electric unit. This is basically the command center for your anti-lock brakes.
The process here is pretty much the same, but we're just focusing on a very specific area. You're going to inspect all the wires and connectors that lead directly to the ABS unit. Because this part is often located lower down in the engine bay, its connections can get hit with a lot more road spray and dirt. So a bad connection right at this spot can easily send a faulty signal up to the main computer, and boom, that's what triggers that C1130 code.
Okay, if all the wiring checks out, we have to consider that the problem might be with the brain itself, the engine control module.
First, you're going to do that same wiring check on the connections going right into the ECM. But if everything looks clean and secure, the module itself could be the issue. And this is a really important point. Replacing or reprogramming an ECM, well, it's not usually a do-it-yourself job. It takes specialized tools to sync it with your car, so this is probably the point where you'd want to bring in a professional mechanic.
And that brings us to our final suspect, which is a little different because it involves the car's data network. It's called the CAN communication line.
Just think of the CAN line as your car's internal nervous system. It's this high-speed network that lets all the different computers, the engine's brain, the brake module, the transmission, all of them talk to each other constantly in real time. An error here isn't a physical wire you can see that's broken. It's more like a digital glitch, a dropped data packet. Finding this kind of fault requires a specific diagnostic scan to listen in on that digital conversation, and if that scan finds an error, that section of the data line will need to be repaired.
Okay, I know that was a lot of information, so let's just boil it all down into one clear, simple action plan that you can use.
This little chart lays out the entire diagnostic flow for you. The absolute key is to start with the physical connections, the main harness and the ABS wiring, because those are the most common issues and the easiest fixes. If those look good, then you can move on to the more complex systems like the ECM and the CAN line. Just use this as your roadmap and you'll be golden.
So the big takeaway here is that an error code doesn't have to be some big, scary mystery. By just following a logical process, you can systematically hunt down the real source of the problem. And honestly, more often than not, the fix is way simpler than you might think. So the only question left is, are you ready to find it?